Hey guys! So I wanted to talk about some recent weight loss that I have experienced and why it's been a journey for me, why it's been difficult for me, and just kind of my thoughts on it. So I don't weigh myself. I stopped weighing myself years and years ago because it was just not good for me. It would just cause me to become obsessive. It would cause me to, feel shame or guilt, like even if I was within the weight, a weight range that is considered healthy by the medical population. So I just stopped doing it because it used to really drive me crazy, and I started focusing more on just eating foods that make me feel good, being an intuitive eater, getting comfortable and just loving being in my body as it was, and focusing on wellness from there. But around the end of 2017, there were just several things that happened. I had several kind of medical related things that were like sort of scares, but probably not a big deal, but just things that I was dealing with that made me really stressed out. And when I'm really stressed out, when I'm worried about things, it tends to just naturally like suppress my appetite, which is interesting because, when I was binge eating all the time and struggling with that, that was how I dealt with my emotions. And now it's kind of like, it's kind of the opposite. I don't know why, but along with that, I also started taking a medication for my mental health that initially, until my body got used to it, it was very, very much suppressing my appetite. And so towards the last few months of 2017, I found it quite difficult to listen to my hunger signals, to eat when I was actually hungry, which is what I do as an intuitive eater, right? So I listen to my body. So it made it hard to do that. So I had to, be more conscious about making myself eat a little bit, making myself have breakfast, making myself like a smoothie and drinking my calories, things like that. But it was still really difficult. And I noticed myself losing weight. And it wasn't because I was weighing myself. It was because I could just tell by the way my clothes fit. So it was quite rapid, not intentional at all, but it was just a result of things that were going on. So naturally, people noticed and people said things, and that was difficult for me, coming from a past of really enjoying the validation that I got when I would lose weight and people would notice and people would compliment me, and then moving into this part of my life where I don't want to focus on that. I don't want to focus on weight at all. I want to focus on making choices that make my body feel good, making choices that are lovingly nourishing to my body, and also eating intuitively so that I don't have any food shame or food guilt. So when people would say things, and obviously it was not with an ill intent, it was meant to be complimenting me, right? Like that's why most people will say, oh, you look really good. You look like you lost weight. But I think it's important for us to remember that weight can change throughout our life for any reason, whether it's healthy or not, right? Somebody can be losing weight, but not doing it in a healthy way, which I was not doing it in a healthy way. Again, it wasn't intentional, but I was very much under eating. And I was struggling with that. And so I didn't want that. I didn't want that weight loss because I knew that once everything balanced back out, which I knew it would, once my stress went down, once I got acclimated to the medication that I was taking, I knew that my appetite was going to come back and it was going to normalize. So I knew that my weight was going to go back to the set point that it's at, that I'm healthy at. So I didn't want it to be acknowledged. I didn't want that attention because even though I consider myself very much recovered and I think I'm a very good intuitive eater, which is why I like to, teach other people about it. Even though I feel stable in that, there's still that little part of me that likes it, that goes back to that, ooh, that feels nice. People think that I look better like this. And I don't follow that anymore, but it still bothers me. So now I'm kind of dealing with the fact that, my appetite's back, things are looking up now, and I'm eating healthfully, I'm eating, listening to my hunger, I'm not having guilt around food, and I know that my body is going to go back to where it's supposed to be, basically. And so that's been a little bit hard, so I've just been doing a little more like, self-care practices, just appreciating my body for everything that it does, just, not thinking about weight at all, just focusing on listening to my body. And I think that's really important in any cycle of the life that we're in. So it's just been a kind of a lesson to me to not judge people based on how they look, obviously, but like not judge people based on their weight or weight changes that they have. Instead, let's ask them how they're doing. Let's ask them what's going on in their life. How are you feeling? Things like that, because whether someone loses or gains weight, we never know if it's for healthy reasons, and someone could be gaining weight for healthy reasons. This is why I just think that it's really important that when we look at health, when we look at being healthy in mind and in body, we don't focus on the scale, we don't focus on a number, we don't focus on a pant size or dress size or shirt size. At least for the majority of people, especially if you have a past of some kind of disordered eating or skewed body image, because it can just make us go crazy, and it can actually make us focus on something that doesn't matter so much, right? If we're focusing on a number, well, I'll give you an example. So back when I was like a teenager and in my 20s, my early 20s, I would go on these diets. I would go on these really restrictive diets, whether, sometimes it was even like I was eating healthy foods, but I was just not listening to my hunger. I was just listening to what a diet plan told me, like when to eat and how much, often leaving me quite hungry in the evenings. But anyway, so I would follow these plans and I would lose a certain amount of weight. And I would track it diligently. Even when I was starting to get closer to being an intuitive eater, I would do stuff, and I still wouldn't weigh myself necessarily, but I would really be paying attention to how my body was changing. And so the weight loss would happen. People would compliment me. I would feel really, really good about myself. And inevitably, after a certain period of time, I would realize that the way that I was eating, or the way that I was exercising, or the way that I was restricting was not going to be sustainable for me long term. Even if I didn't want to admit it, I would start to fall back into cravings or giving in to cravings, or eating things that I was eating before, or binge eating because I was depriving myself. I was thinking so much, I was tightening the reins so much, not letting myself have certain foods, that I would turn to them and I would binge on them instead. So obviously that's not helping me, right? Restricting and focusing on weight was not helping me in the long run. It wasn't keeping me healthy because I was binge eating, or I was just returning to the weight I was before. It wasn't sustainable. And so if we think about it in that context, if we look at the big picture, it's so much more healthy for us to not focus on that number, not focus on that scale, focus on finding a way that we eat that is natural for us, that will last us for our lifetime, right? And that is what intuitive eating is about. And so that's what I am focusing so much on during this time when my body may be changing a little bit, is that I cannot get obsessive. I have to listen internally to what's right and get back to that place of balance for me, because that is what will be sustainable for me long term. And I'm not going to torture myself under eating or eating a perfect diet in order to be a little bit thinner and get compliments from people more, versus being happy and eating healthy foods and also enjoying like a vegan donut, which I'm probably going to have this evening, having a balance of things and being healthy in mind and body. That's what the goal is. So that's just a little reminder there about weight loss and kind of what I'm going through and how I'm dealing with it. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And until then, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.